Good day, everybody. This is Chris of the Ancient Scholar. Hope this video finds you all doing well. It's the weekend. I don't think I'll have this video out by the weekend, maybe early next week, but I hope you have a great weekend nonetheless. I'm actually commuting over to my side job, my side gig. Got my scrubs here. I'm going to change it too when I get there. But I had a few minutes, so I thought what I'd do is try to record a video. This is not going to have any medically relevant or educationally relevant content in it, and it's just a follow-on video to a series I just finished. I finished the first season of the series, and this will complement a video I did a while back with my impressions of another show that takes place in the same universe and has the same creator, that is Vivian Madrano. And I'm referencing the Spindlehorse universe, and that was hell of a boss. And now the Hazbin Hotel season 1 has all episodes of season 1, all 8 episodes have dropped, and I was able to essentially binge watch it over a couple of commutes. So watch a couple episodes, actually about half the season on my drive to work, and then the other half on my commute back home on my regular job. So it's it's about an hour 15 commute, so I could knock it all out in a day essentially. And so I'm just kind of here to give my general impressions of my review, if you will, of the season 1 of Hazbin Hotel. And it has been interesting. I certainly haven't taken a deep dive into all the reviews and all the social media, but it does seem somewhat contentious, and it just seems like it has been that way for years as this show has been developed and pitched, and A24 picked it up, and then went to Amazon Prime. I mean, it's been, what, over 4 years? Since the pilot dropped. I think it was in 2019, the fall of 2019, somewhere around there when the pilot dropped. And it's just been a lot of interesting drama has surrounded that, the whole production of this. Mainly, if I just by looking at it, mainly seems to be social media drama, perhaps not so much real life drama. I don't know. It's hard to separate those things in some cases, but it has been kind of contentious. I'm not entirely sure why. I think the pilot took a lot of people by storm. There's a lot of interest, and people have had years to kind of sit and stew in it and come up with theories and develop headcanons, and that mixed with a substantial amount of high expectations. And the fact that I think a lot of people have benefited monetarily, at least, from this, due to the content that they can put up. And if that content gets a lot of views, then they're able to benefit from all of the drama that surrounds it. So it's just this interesting powerhouse of Spindlehorse, powerhouse of really high expectations, and that's kind of the backdrop going into this season. And anytime you have a situation like this, you're kind of set up to fail, right? When you have these incredibly high expectations, you have a new show, you have a lot of moving parts, and you just have a lot of high expectations. And my suspicion is that there are some people, maybe a lot of people, whose expectations, theories, personal headcanons were not realized, and so that has caused maybe some angst and some backlash. I think overall, the show seems to have received a very, very good reception. It seems very popular, and it all but seems likely. It's very unlikely that we won't see a second season. A second season seems virtually inevitable at this point in time. So yeah, so with all that out of the way, where do I land? What are my thoughts on season 1 of the Hazbin Hotel? So my thoughts, we'll start off with my criticisms first. And my criticisms are more or less in line with a lot of the popular common criticism that I've seen. And that is, I felt that the story was way too rushed. It was way too condensed. There were large time skips that were really abrupt and just didn't seem to complement the story. And I honestly thought that the story was at its best when there were periods of time that allowed for the episodes and the narrative structure to breathe a little bit, where things actually slowed down and there was actually substantive conversation that occurred, and that didn't happen very often. But there was earlier on in the episode, earlier on in the season, about halfway through the season, there was a couple of characters, Angel Dust and Husk, who had some development, some conversations that were nice. Toward the end of the season, there was a protracted conversation between the main character, Charlotte or Charlie, and the pro/antagonistic force, or one of the pro/antagonistic forces of the show, Alastor. And I was actually a little disappointed that the relationship between Alastor and Charlie was rather underdeveloped. They really didn't interact much until almost near the end of the show, where they actually had, again, several minutes to kind of breathe and interact, and you can kind of see the dynamics at play. So again, I just thought it was rushed, and I thought that it probably could have benefited, not probably, it could have benefited from a couple of additional a couple of different additional episodes, 2, 3, maybe even 4, for a 12 episode run. And so I'm not necessarily going to completely put that on Vivian Medrano and the creative team, because I suspect that they had a lot of constraints. And I suspect that maybe early on in the season, as they were creating this, there was some uncertainty about whether or not they would be able to continue the story beyond a season. And so I suspect that there was a significant amount of pressure to put as much content and as many mysteries and reveals and things like that in this first season, in order to have in order to cover a lot of different bases in the event that a second season didn't occur. So that's my suspicion. I could be totally off base there, but that's kind of, I just feel like they really rushed it, packed a lot of stuff, made it crazy and frenetic, because early on they maybe weren't sure whether or not a second season would materialize. And so my hope is for the second season that they do allow themselves to slow down a bit, breathe a bit, have the characters interact a bit. But that's my preference. I'm sure that there are a lot of people that rather enjoy kind of the crazy, zany Looney Tunes aspect of the show. But I really maybe enjoy the slower moments of periods of time where we explored the characters. So early on, it was actually kind of off-putting. The first couple of episodes were a bit off-putting, and they were very, very fast, and I was pretty ambivalent. And then what seemed to happen is, as the season progressed, it did seem to iron itself out quite a bit. And then by the end of the season, the last 2 episodes of the season in particular, I thought were actually masterful. Really masterclass masterclass animation in storytelling. I thought the penultimate and the finale were great episodes. So a little ambivalent, a little rough at the start, but I thought they had a very strong finish. As far as the music goes, I think that's just a personal preference. It seems like a lot of people enjoyed the music, and that's fine. And I would say that music is not, or music integrated into the overall story structure, out front, center, like its own character, like a musical, like a Broadway musical, that's just simply not to my taste or to my liking. I'm not a big fan of musicals. I don't do Broadway and off-Broadway. I don't go to plays and that kind of stuff. So I'm a bit of an uncultured plebe in that sense, and so it really doesn't do anything for me. But that's not a flaw of the show. That's a feature, right? That they were very upfront about that this is going to be a musical show. So I'm certainly not going to count that against the show. It just wasn't really to my taste, so to speak, just having songs and stuff. But the musically it was fine. They were fine. They enhanced the story, and there was nothing wrong with it at all. It's just a taste thing on my behalf. So I would say those are my major criticisms. And there's some minor quips I have about some plot issues and some plot holes and this and that, but that's relatively minor, and it's really not worth opining on all that much. So I'm really not. So with my criticisms out of the way, let's talk a little more about what I really liked about the show. And I'd say from a 30,000 foot view, pull back and just take a look at the overall, the general, or the broad overarching story. I think is a great story. It's not exactly a new story, but in contemporary times, it's not like anything is new. A lot of the stories we tell, you can trace back to ancient writings in the Iliad, the Odyssey, the Art of War, the Bhagavad Gita, and et cetera, et cetera. So this overarching theme of redemption, of bettering oneself, to get oneself out of a bad situation, and some of the archetypes that are explored with the characters, I thought was great. I think just the broad strokes overall story, it's great. The timeline was quite rushed and compressed, but overall I think it was a great story, and overall I'm pretty happy. My gripes aside, I'm really happy. I mean, this is a really good first season. Yeah, it was rushed. Yeah, it had a kind of a rough start. I was ambivalent at points, but overall, it told a good story. It was colorful. The animation was good. The music was good. If you like that, I really have no major complaints. I think it was a good first effort, and it did more or less what it set out to do. So that's my overall impression of this first season. Some specific things that I really enjoyed. I would say that I really enjoyed how they dealt with Alastor. And I was a little frightened because, again, it was so rushed. There were certain things that happened that were resolved really quickly. Like the mystery of early on of who killed an angel, and apparently that's never happened. And then, more or less within an episode, it was resolved. So there were things like that. And so I'm really glad that they kind of held back on Alastor, and they kind of, throughout the season, gave us little hints of what's going on. You're like, oh, Alastor's been gone for 7 years, and somebody else is gone for 7 years, and is there a relationship there? And that was never fully realized. So you're left going, I wonder what's going on there. Oh, Alastor is apparently entangled himself with somebody else, and his soul, so to speak, is actually owned by someone else. Is this a demon? Is this a demonic force? Is this an angelic force? Is this something else? Is this maybe someone else who's been gone for 7 years? I don't know. It was not revealed. It was explored a little bit, but not fully revealed. And then I thought that they made a really good choice in throughout the entire season. Alastor was kind of portrayed as this unstoppable demonic force who was incredibly powerful, even overpowered at one point. And there's a lot of build-up, and then in the final episode of the season, he goes up against one of the most powerful, or actually the most powerful villain in the season, and he does not succeed, or does not entirely succeed, and there is some vulnerability there. And so I like that they explored a little bit of the vulnerability while still maintaining the mystery and the intrigue of the character, and still letting us know that he took some hits, but he is by no means down and out, and there's a lot of mystery and a lot of questions about him going into the next season, and I think that particular arc was handled really well. Another arc that I thought was handled really well, and I thought that I would not like this at all. Even back in the pilot, I really wasn't particularly taken by Sir Pentious as one of the characters who I think was originally portrayed as going to be a villain, or like a comic relief villain, the villain that always fails, like Plankton, if you go back to other cartoons, Wile E. Coyote, that kind of no threat. And the character arc that Sir Pentious went through was actually kind of incredible, and they really did some smart things with him toward the end of the show, where he starts off as kind of this villain that's always going to fail, to coming into the hotel, to bonding, to toward the end, he's a kind of like a more gentlemanly individual, more very traditional in the way that he talks and thinks, and you get the sense that he's from the 17 or 1800s, and so his speech is a little different, and toward the end, he struggles to, he says something on the lines of, "What did you think? We were a bunch of pussies," and he kind of struggles to get that out because it's not a part of his vernacular, but you can see that he's progressed and he's kind of a part of the team. And then, spoiler alert, he ends up, quote unquote, dying, very unceremoniously, might I add, which I suppose is in line with the theme of this, lovable guy that's just destined to fail. And so he just gets one-shotted, he just big dramatic. He kind of gets the girl. He's on board and loved by everyone, part of the team. And this is his last final stand, and he just gets one-shotted, unceremoniously obliterated, vaporized, and that's that for Sir Pentious. I'm not necessarily supportive of stories doing this, of bringing major characters back to life, as it were. Oh, just kidding, he wasn't really dead. But the way in which this was handled, I thought, was very smart and moved the story along, actually, quite a bit, in my opinion. And that is, at the very end of the episode, Sir Pentious materializes in heaven, and he is now a redeemed soul, apparently. And I think that was kind of a great way to end the episode, where, oh, wait a minute, this guy did all the things on this seemingly arbitrary list of items that was presented earlier about, oh, well, what does someone need to do to go to heaven? Well, spoiler alert, they don't really know. It's just like people materialize in heaven and hell, and they either win or they lose. And none of the angels seem to really know, what the exact rules to this are. But it's very clear that, Sir Pentious had this arc where he changed, where he developed friends and kinship, where he selflessly sacrificed himself. And it almost seems, and this is maybe I'm theorizing here, but I suppose I will, because isn't that part of the fun of all this, is to think about, well, I wonder, what if? And so it kind of left me thinking, I wonder if this isn't a feature of this universe. Early on, there's this whole song about, hell is forever, and, heaven, that's just the way it is, and this is how it is, and you can't change it. And maybe that's true, and maybe what is canonical to this universe is hell is more of like a bardo. If you're familiar with the concept of bardo in Buddhism, bardo is this intermediate place, and certain people who follow Catholicism, there is a kind of a somewhat similar concept in Catholicism. It's more of a well, you weren't the total bad dudes, so you're going to kind of go to this. You're not going to heaven, but you're not going to suffer in the standard way either. But bardo is kind of this place where souls go for a period of time, typically about a month or so, and it's kind of a place where an intermediate place where souls go to figure their shit out, essentially, and figure out, well, do I need to reincarnate, or can I progress into some other higher state, so to speak. And perhaps hell is a sort of bardo state in this universe, where it was never intended for people to go there and suffer ad infinitum like they do currently, but this is a feature of the universe, of the Spindlehorse universe, where you go there, you figure your shit out, you get redeemed, quote unquote redeemed, and then you can reincarnate, as it were, as a redeemed or in a more enlightened individual in heaven. And maybe that's kind of a missing piece, and now that and perhaps Sir Pentious dying and reincarnating, as it were, or incarnating in heaven, this might be a way of moving the plot forward substantively, in that now there is this mechanism, this unrealized or unrecognized mechanism for actually redeeming people and actually moving things forward, instead of fighting heaven, where that's kind of what happened in this season, where this is all about conflict with heaven. So now maybe we have this mechanism for actually moving forward, or maybe not, but it does seem like that now opens that possibility, and really advances the plot forward, and then that can allow for interesting things to occur in the future. Anyway, that's just a personal theory of mine. I have no idea if that will actually be realized, but it does seem like that could be a possible scenario. So yeah, those two particular areas or components of the show are things that I like, with what happened with Alastor, all the mystery surrounding him, and what is he going to do, and is he ultimately going to be a villainous force, a redemptive force, or perhaps he is a little more nuanced and is kind of a combination there of a superposition of good and bad things. I don't really have a great feel, and that's kind of neat, because he doesn't wear his feelings on his sleeve. He is kind of the antithesis to the main character, Charlie, who, her emotions are just out there, just bare for everyone to see and experience, where he is very much much more reserved, always has a smile and doesn't really reveal anything that's going on to the audience as well, right? So you're getting drip fed some things, and you can tell that he is utterly desperate to get out of whatever situation he's in, whatever type of bondage that he's in. He is absolutely desperate to get out of that, and I wonder if even in that final episode, if he didn't, part of the reason that he took on this substantial risk, honestly, was he went against the most powerful villainous force, and he was even singing about it later on, that he went and did this with his friends. I don't know if he was saying that ironically, but it just seems like there's a lot going on there with him, and perhaps he is really struggling with his demonic nature, and then the better angels of his nature, or perhaps he will turn out to be a completely unredeemed villain, and that's okay as well, right? Sometimes having a unredeemably evil, self-aware villain is okay. It's kind of fun. I would point to another show that is somewhat similar to Hazbin. It's a little different, but it explores some of the same themes, and that's called Villainous, which comes out of Mexico, actually. Originally, the creator, I think, is Mexican, and there is a character in there, a Black Hat, and as far as I can tell, and all the stuff I've seen, he's just an evil dude. He's just irredeemably evil. He knows it. Everybody knows it, and that's the way it is, and he can have a lot of fun, and that's okay as well. I just don't know, and I'm so happy that I don't at this point, and that leaves a lot of space for exploration in the next season. So I'm actually pretty excited about season 2. I really hope they can iron out the pacing issues, tighten up the story a little bit, allow things to breathe, and explore some of these questions in more detail. And in addition to that, they left us with another cliffhanger involving Lilith, who is supposedly Charlie's mother, although it's not clear to me that is necessarily the case. That Lucifer apparently has had relations with both Lilith and Eve, and that, anyway, there's actually quite a bit that needs to be explored. So they didn't wrap up everything. There are a lot of questions, and that's great, because that just gives a lot of momentum moving forward into the next season. So I'm really excited about it. I hope you all are as well, and hopefully you enjoyed this video and take my opinion for what you think it's worth. Probably not much. All right, everyone. Have a great time, have a great weekend, and we'll see you in the next video.